That night still haunts me. The smell of smoke was the first thing that hit me, thick and sharp, filling my lungs before I was even fully awake. I remember the confusion, how my eyes burned, how I reached for the doorknob, and it wouldn't move. It was locked. I thought maybe it was stuck because of the heat, but when I yanked harder and heard the metallic click of the bolt, something inside me broke. Someone had locked me in. At first, I screamed for help, thinking it was a mistake. The fire alarm was wailing, the walls were hot, and the smoke was getting darker, heavier. I could barely breathe. I shouted for my dad, for my mom, for Ethan, my brother. But the only answer I got was silence, and then the faint sound of footsteps outside the door. I called again, coughing, crying, but they didn't come. They didn't even try. I grabbed the blanket from my bed and pressed it against the crack under the door, trying to block the smoke. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold it. I could see the orange light growing under the door, flickering, creeping closer. My heart was pounding so loud it felt like it echoed in my ears. I thought I was going to die. And then I heard it. A voice. Familiar. Calm. My brother's voice. He said something I'll never forget. Let it burn. It's done. I froze. For a second, I thought maybe I was imagining it. But then I heard his footsteps moving away fast. My stomach turned cold, even though the room was burning. That was the moment I realized the truth. This wasn't an accident. I tried the window, but the heat on the glass made it impossible to touch. The smoke got thicker. Every breath hurt. I don't remember much after that, just the sound of crackling wood, the ceiling groaning, and the fear that this was how my life was going to end. When I woke up later in a hospital bed, I was wrapped in bandages, barely able to move. The nurses said I was lucky, that firefighters had found me unconscious but alive. I didn't feel lucky. I felt empty. The people who were supposed to protect me had tried to kill me. They told me my family thought I hadn't made it. They said there had been a fire, that everything was gone. And for a moment, I let them believe it. Because deep down, I knew that if they thought I was still alive, they might try again. So I stayed quiet. I stayed hidden. And as the days turned into weeks, one thought kept me alive. They thought they'd buried me in those ashes. But I wasn't gone. I was still here. And one day, they were going to know exactly what it felt like to lose everything. From the outside, people thought my family was close and happy. We smiled at church, waved to neighbors, and acted like everything was fine. But the truth was different. Inside our house, love came with rules and conditions. My father, Carl, believed control meant order. He managed every bill, every decision, even what kind of cereal we bought. My mother, Denise, stayed quiet. She didn't question him. She pretended not to see the things that were wrong because it was easier to live in denial than to face the truth. Ethan, my older brother, was the golden child. He could do no wrong. If he got in trouble at school, Dad called the teacher unfair. If I got a B on a test, Dad called me lazy. Ethan got the new car when he turned 16. I got his old bike, rusted and missing a pedal. It didn't bother me much at first. I told myself that's just how families worked. But as I got older, it started to sting, especially when I saw how far my parents would go to protect Ethan and how easily they dismissed me. Then my grandmother died and everything shifted. She had always been my safe place, the one person who treated me with kindness. She saw how my parents treated me and made sure I knew I was loved. When she passed away, I was heartbroken, but also surprised to learn she left her house and savings to me. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to build a future. For the first time, I had something that was mine. My parents didn't congratulate me. They didn't even hide their anger. My father said it was unfair, that I was too young to handle responsibility. My mother just looked away, like she wished it hadn't happened. Ethan laughed, called me Grandma's favorite, and joked that I'd waste it all anyway. But their jokes turned into arguments. They started showing up at the house uninvited, pretending to help with repairs, asking about paperwork. Dad would say things like, "It makes sense for me to manage this for you," or "We'll keep it in the family." At first, I thought they were just being protective. But I started noticing small things, missing letters, phone calls I never got, and their sudden interest in the property value. It was like they were circling, waiting for the right moment. The warmth I used to feel around them was gone. The house that once felt safe now made me uneasy when they were around. I could sense something building under the surface, something dark. I tried to keep my distance, but they always found a way back in. I didn't know it then, but that inheritance was the spark that would burn everything down. Their love had never been real. It was just convenience. And the moment I had something they wanted, they stopped pretending. After my grandmother's passing, I moved into her old house. It needed some repairs, but I loved it because it felt like a piece of her was still there. My family acted different after that. They started visiting more often, bringing food, helping with cleaning, pretending to be supportive. My mom said it was a way for us to stay close, and my dad said we could make the place shine again. For a while, I believed them. I wanted to. Ethan was always around too. He'd show up with a smile and say things like, "You shouldn't be alone here," or "Dad says we can help with the heavy stuff." They made it sound like a family project, like they were trying to rebuild a bond. I told myself maybe they had changed. I wanted peace more than anything. But slowly, I started to feel something was off. Papers that I had left on the kitchen table would disappear. Mail came opened, or not at all. My father insisted on handling all the renovation permits and contractor payments, saying it was too stressful for me. I tried to ask questions, but he always brushed me off. "Don't worry about it, Mara," he'd say. "Your family. We've got this." One afternoon, I came home early from work and heard voices in the living room. My parents and Ethan were talking in low tones. When I walked in, they stopped. My mom smiled too quickly and said they were just discussing paint colors. But there were no paint samples around, just a folder that my dad quickly shut and tucked under his arm. I didn't push it then, but my gut told me something was wrong. A few days later, I went to look for the house deed, the original one my grandmother kept in her desk. The drawer was locked. It had never been locked before. I asked my mom if she'd seen the key, and she said she didn't know what I was talking about. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the dark, listening to the old house creak and wondering what they were really doing behind my back. Then came the contractors. They showed up one morning without notice, claiming they were sent by my father to inspect the place. They walked around with clipboards, taking pictures, whispering to each other. When I asked questions, they said my dad had already handled the paperwork. Something inside me tightened. I felt like I was being pushed out of my own home. I wanted to believe it was all a misunderstanding, but deep down I knew better. My family wasn't fixing the house for me. They were fixing it for themselves. I could see it in their eyes, that greedy spark, that hidden tension when I asked simple questions. I didn't know exactly what they were planning, but I could feel it coming. A storm was brewing quietly under my roof, and by the time I realized what it really was, it was already too late. That night, the air felt colder than usual. I had spent the whole day sanding floors and painting the guest room, so by the time I lay down, I was exhausted. The house was quiet, and the smell of fresh paint still hung in the air. I remember feeling proud of how far the renovations had come, even though I'd been doing most of the work alone. I didn't know that while I slept, my family was setting everything in motion. Sometime past midnight, I woke up coughing. The room was filled with thick smoke that burned my throat and stung my eyes. At first, I was confused. I thought maybe something had gone wrong with the wiring or a candle had fallen. I stumbled toward the door, but when I tried to open it, the knob wouldn't turn. I pushed harder, then harder again, but it was locked. I could hear the crackling sound of flames in the hallway. Panic hit me like a wave. I shouted for help, my voice hoarse from the smoke. I screamed for my dad, my mom, for Ethan. No one answered. The fire alarm started blaring, and the heat grew unbearable. I wrapped a blanket around my arm and tried to shoulder the door open, but it wouldn't budge. That's when I heard it, faint but clear. Ethan's voice. It came from the other side of the door. "Calm. Cold," he said. "Let it burn. It's done." Then his footsteps faded away. For a few seconds, I couldn't move. I stood there, frozen, trying to believe I'd heard wrong. But deep down, I knew exactly what was happening. My own brother was walking away while I was trapped inside. The flames spread fast. I ran to the window, but the glass was too hot to touch. I used my blanket to cover my hands and tried to hit it, but I was too weak. My lungs were filling with smoke. Every breath burned. My vision blurred, and my legs felt heavy. I could hear the walls cracking, the roof groaning above me. The last thing I remember was the sound of sirens in the distance, faint but getting closer. I tried to crawl toward the noise, but the floor felt like it was melting beneath me. Everything went dark after that. When I finally woke up, everything was white, the walls, the sheets, the lights. I was in a hospital bed, covered in bandages. My body ached everywhere. A nurse told me I'd been pulled out just in time. The firefighters had found me unconscious in what was left of my bedroom. Later, I overheard them talking. They said my family thought I didn't survive. They had already held a service. They even sold the house. No one came to see me. No one asked if I was alive. As I lay there, staring at the ceiling, the truth settled in. The people I loved had left me to die, and now they were out there living their lives like nothing happened. But I wasn't gone. Not yet. When I woke up in the hospital, I didn't recognize myself. My hands were wrapped in thick white bandages, and most of my body was covered in burns. The skin that wasn't bandaged felt tight and sore. Breathing hurt. Talking hurt. Even thinking hurt. The doctor said I was lucky to be alive, but I didn't feel lucky. I felt lost. For weeks, I stayed in a small, quiet room, barely speaking. The nurses came and went, checking my vitals and changing my bandages. Most of them kept their distance, maybe because of how bad I looked, but one nurse, Clara, treated me like a person. She didn't flinch when she saw my scars. She didn't ask questions I couldn't answer. She just sat with me and talked about little things, the weather, her kids, her favorite movies, until I found the strength to talk back. When I finally told her my name, she looked at me for a long time and said softly, "You can't go back home, can you?" I shook my head. I told her everything I remembered, the fire, the locked door, Ethan's voice. Her face went pale. From that moment, she became more than a nurse. She became my only friend. Clara helped me figure out what to do next. The doctors wanted to list me under my legal name, but I begged them not to. If my family found out I was alive, I knew they'd try to finish what they started. Clara understood. She talked to a hospital administrator she trusted and arranged for me to be registered under a fake identity. From then on, I was Marie Collins. The recovery was long. Months of surgeries, skin grafts, and therapy. I had to relearn simple things like holding a spoon or walking without pain. Every time I looked in the mirror, I saw a stranger. My hair was gone, my face scarred. The girl I used to be had burned away in that fire. Clara was the one who told me what happened after I died. She had quietly looked up news articles and public records. My parents and Ethan had told everyone I was trapped inside and didn't make it out. There had even been a small memorial service. But what hit me hardest was what came after, the insurance payout. The fire insurance on the house, the life insurance policy my grandmother left, and my inheritance savings. They collected it all. Every penny. They didn't just try to kill me, they profited from it. The house was sold. My car, my things all gone. And not a single person had questioned the story. It was like I had been erased. At first, I cried for days. Then the sadness turned into something else, something sharper. I realized that my old life was gone forever, but I was still breathing. That meant I had time. Time to heal. Time to rebuild. And eventually, time to make them face what they had done. Clara told me once that sometimes survival itself is revenge. But I knew mine wouldn't end there. I didn't survive just to hide. I survived for a reason. When my body began to heal, my mind refused to rest. The pain was still there, but something inside me had shifted. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was someone waiting for the right moment. While I went through endless therapy sessions and slow recovery, I started gathering information. I needed to understand exactly what they had done and how they had gotten away with it. Clara helped me get a small laptop. From the quiet room I rented near the hospital, I began digging through public records. I looked up property documents, insurance claims, and local reports about the fire. At first, it was just curiosity, but soon the truth started to show itself. The fire had been ruled accidental. The investigation was closed quickly, thanks to confirmed witness statements. I followed that trail and found the name, a neighbor who claimed he saw me trapped inside before the house collapsed. But when I looked deeper, I discovered that this same man had suddenly received a large payment from my father's business account days after the fire. That was when I realized how far they had gone. They hadn't just left me to die. They had planned it so perfectly that it looked clean, legal, and final. They'd filed all the right paperwork and made sure no one ever questioned it. My father even filed false statements, claiming I had no other assets or accounts, so they could claim everything through inheritance. I started saving every document, screenshot, and receipt. I built digital folders, labeled and organized by date, name, and connection. I treated it like a case, because that's what it was. A case for justice. Every night before I slept, I looked at those files and told myself, one day, this will destroy them. The next 2 years, I lived quietly under my new name. I took small online jobs to earn money, mostly bookkeeping and freelance work. It wasn't much, but it helped me rebuild. I stayed away from my hometown, never used my real identity, and kept my circle small. Clara was the only person who knew the truth. During that time, I learned patience. I wanted to go back right away to confront them, but I knew rushing would ruin everything. They needed to believe I was gone for good, buried and forgotten. The longer they felt safe, the harder it would hit when I returned. I also worked on myself. Physically, emotionally, mentally. I joined a support group under my new identity and listened to stories from people who had survived betrayal and loss. Their words made me stronger. They reminded me that revenge wasn't just about anger. It was about closure. When I finally looked in the mirror one morning, 2 years later, I barely recognized the woman staring back. The scars were still there, but my eyes looked different, sharper, calmer. I wasn't the broken girl they left in that burning house anymore. I was someone new, someone they'd never expect to see again. That was the day I decided it was time to go home. Not to forgive, not to forget, but to make sure every one of them felt the same fire they had left me in. When I finally went back to Cedar Grove, it didn't feel like home anymore. The streets were the same, the small shops still stood in the same places, but everything felt colder. I had changed too much to belong there. I rented a small house on a quiet street, right across from my parents. They didn't know who I was. To them, I was Marcy Dale, a woman who had just moved into town for work. My new face, shorter hair, and the faint scars made me almost unrecognizable. I made sure of that. The first few days, I kept my distance. I wanted to see how they lived after what they did to me. My parents' house looked newer, cleaner, the result of the money they got after the fire. A shiny black SUV sat in the driveway. They had built a comfortable life off my ashes. Ethan lived a few streets away, in a townhouse he bragged about online. They all seemed happy, but it wasn't real happiness. It was comfort built on lies. The first time I saw them up close again was at the grocery store. I was walking down the aisle when I heard my mother's voice. I froze for a second before turning around. She was standing by the jam shelf, talking to a cashier. When she turned and saw me, her face went pale. She dropped the jar she was holding, and it shattered on the floor. For a few seconds, we just stared at each other. I could see the confusion in her eyes. She saw something familiar, something she couldn't name. I gave her a polite smile and said, "Sorry, are you okay?" Her hands trembled as she nodded. "Why, yes, I just got startled," she stammered. I walked past her, pretending not to notice the way she stared after me. I could feel her eyes following me until I turned the corner. My heart was pounding, but not from fear. For the first time, I saw guilt in her face. She didn't know it was me, but something inside her recognized the person she had left to die. Over the next few weeks, I saw them often. My father mowing the lawn, pretending to be the proud family man. My mother chatting with neighbors, smiling too wide. They looked normal on the outside, but I could tell they were restless. Every time I passed by their house, my mother's expression would tighten. She couldn't explain why she felt uneasy, but I could. Somewhere deep down, she knew I wasn't gone. Ethan was harder to find. I saw him one night at a local bar, laughing with friends. He looked older but still carried himself with the same arrogance. I watched from a corner booth as he threw his money around, acting like nothing could touch him. If he recognized me, he didn't show it. That was fine. I wasn't ready to face him yet. For now, I wanted them uneasy, to feel the way I had felt, trapped and unsure of what was coming. I wasn't there for violence. I was there for truth. I wanted to take their comfort away piece by piece, just like they took my peace years ago. Every morning, when I saw their curtains move and caught a glimpse of their faces, I reminded myself, they thought I was dead. But now, I was their ghost come to life. And this time, I wasn't going anywhere. Once I settled back in Cedar Grove, I started quietly collecting everything I needed. I spent weeks watching, listening, and waiting for the right moment to begin. My goal wasn't to hurt them physically. I wanted to destroy their lies piece by piece, until they had nothing left to hide behind. Ethan was the first. I knew he was careless with money, always chasing quick wins. It didn't take long to find out he'd gotten himself deep into gambling again. I followed the trail, late-night visits to betting sites, secret loans, and credit card charges under fake names. He had been using money from his company's account to pay his debts, thinking no one would ever find out. But I did. I gathered every record I could, screenshots, transaction logs, and receipts, and sent them anonymously to his boss. Within a week, everything blew up. Ethan was called into a meeting, and by the end of that day, he was out of a job. Soon after, an investigation started. Word spread fast, and the same people who once respected him now avoided him. I watched from a distance as he tried to keep up his confident act, but it was useless. His perfect image was falling apart. Then I turned my attention to my parents. They were still living comfortably, pretending to be the grieving family who had lost their daughter in a fire. I knew there was more behind their money than just the insurance payout. So I went digging. I found tax records where my father had underreported the insurance amount. He'd hidden money in a separate account under my mother's name. They'd claimed certain charitable deductions that didn't exist and transferred property under false values. It was fraud, clean on paper, but not clean enough to escape my eyes. I made copies of everything and mailed them to the IRS office, leaving no trace of myself. I didn't expect immediate results, but when the letters started arriving at their house weeks later, I knew it had begun. The first knock on their door came from government agents asking questions. My mother panicked. My father tried to act calm, but I could see the tension growing day by day. The more they tried to hide, the worse it got. Their accounts were frozen. Their neighbors whispered. The same people who used to praise them now avoided eye contact. Every piece of comfort they'd built from my pain started slipping away. I didn't rush any of it. Every step was careful, planned, silent. I wanted them to feel trapped the way I had felt, surrounded by something closing in, with no way out. At night, I would sit by the window and watch their lights go out earlier and earlier. My father stopped mowing the lawn. My mother stopped going out. Ethan started drinking more. The proud Jensen family was crumbling, and they had no idea who was behind it. Just like the fire, this revenge burned slow and deep. Only this time, I was the one holding the match, and I wasn't finished yet. The day the repo men showed up, the air felt heavy, like the town knew something was ending. I watched from my car as two men in plain jackets walked up the Jensen driveway with clipboards. They moved slow, professional, and not a single neighbor stopped to stare. It was quiet in a way that made my chest ache. I parked a block away and walked up the path like anyone else coming home. My father was on the porch when I reached the bottom of the steps, holding a rolled-up newspaper like a shield. My mother stood behind him, her hands twisting the fabric of her dress. Ethan was pacing near the garage, a small, angry animal snapping at the air. None of them looked at me right away. Maybe they thought I was a stranger, a neighbor, someone they could ignore. When I got close enough, I felt my legs steady. I had rehearsed this moment in my head 1,000 times, but rehearsals never make your voice steady in real life. I stopped a few feet from them and waited until the repo men finished their business. The men were polite, crisp, and efficient. They signed papers, took a few keys, and stepped back into their truck. The engine growled to life. The metal box with their things was pulled away down the street. The driveway looked suddenly empty and small. That was when I spoke. My voice surprised me, clear, calm, and cold. "Hello," I said. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My father stared like someone watching a dream he couldn't wake from. Ethan stopped mid-step. I watched the color drain from my mother's face until it looked like someone had taken chalk and rubbed her pale. She dropped onto the porch step, the sound sharp in the quiet. My father tried to laugh it off at first, a harsh, broken sound. He called my name the old way, with pity and a hope that it would undo what he saw. He said I should be a ghost. He begged for some kind of miracle that would let him go back. I didn't move. I watched him search my face for the girl he thought was gone. He didn't see mercy there. He saw the truth he had been avoiding for years. They stumbled over apologies and excuses. Ethan said it was his fault, that he'd been pressured, that he'd made bad choices. My mother wept and asked me to forgive them, to let the family be whole again. Their voices sounded small and thin. I held my phone in my hand like a talisman. I didn't shout, and I didn't raise my voice. I simply told them I had nothing to give. There was nothing left to salvage from what they had taken. Then I handed a small envelope to the officer who was arriving at the scene. Inside were the things that mattered, names, dates, and words that tied the last years into a single, undeniable truth. The officer read, nodded, and made a call. I watched my parents' faces change from pleading to panic in a single breath. I saw my brother's jaw clench as he realized this wasn't talk or rumor anymore. When the handcuffs clicked, the sound was worse than any scream I had ever made in that burning room. It was neat, final, and irreversible. Watching them led away, their heads bent and proud posture gone, I felt something in me loosen. It wasn't joy. It wasn't victory. It was simple, plain relief, like a long-held breath finally let go. Neighbors watched from doorways. No one cheered. No one jeered. Life moved on in small, ordinary ways. A dog barked, a car passed, a child rode a bike. I stayed on that porch until the sun began to go down, until the shadows grew long across the lawn. I didn't shout or dance. I simply stood, feeling the quiet spread through me. That night I sat alone for a long time and let the silence settle. The hard part was over, and the softer work of healing was just beginning. I had made them face what they had done. That was enough for now. Sometimes I still find myself driving down Cedar Grove Road, where the old Jensen house used to stand. There's nothing left of it now, just an empty lot covered in wild grass and cracked concrete. Most people passing by wouldn't even know a home once stood there, let alone the kind of horror that took place. But I know. Every time I see that empty space, it feels like looking at an old scar, healed but never forgotten. For a long time, I thought revenge would fix everything. I believed that making them pay would erase the nightmares, the fear, and the smell of smoke that still follows me in my dreams. But when it was all done, when the police took them away and I was standing there watching it happen, I realized something deeper. Revenge doesn't heal you. It just closes a chapter you've been afraid to finish. It doesn't erase the past, but it lets you stop running from it. After the trial, I left Cedar Grove for good. I moved to a small town up north and started over under my real name again, Mara Jensen. I didn't hide anymore. The scars on my arms, the faint burn marks across my shoulder, they're part of me now. I stopped trying to cover them because they remind me that I survived something that should have destroyed me. They remind me that no matter how bad it gets, there's always a way back. People sometimes ask if I ever forgave them. The truth is complicated. I don't forgive what they did, locking me in that burning house, taking my inheritance, and leaving me for dead. But I let go of the anger. Holding on to hate only keeps you tied to the people who hurt you. I didn't want to live like that anymore. Letting go didn't mean forgetting. It just meant freeing myself from their shadow. My father died in prison 3 years later. My mother is still there, and Ethan took a plea deal that keeps him under watch. I never visited them, not once. I didn't need to see their faces again. The last time I saw them was enough. Every lie, every tear, every excuse, it all burned away the same night they tried to end me. They destroyed themselves long before I ever lifted a hand against them. Now, when I wake up in the morning, I open my windows wide and let the light in. I plant flowers in my yard, wildflowers mostly, because they grow no matter where you put them. They don't need perfect soil, they just need a chance. Sometimes when the wind moves through them, I think of that night and how I survived it. I think of Clara, the nurse who helped me start over, and the strangers who gave me kindness when my own family gave me nothing but pain. The past doesn't haunt me anymore. It just reminds me who I became. I'm not the scared girl begging behind a locked door. I'm a woman who faced fire and walked out of it stronger than before. My family built their world on greed and deceit, but in the end, those same flames consumed them. As for me, I built something new. Not from ashes, but from truth, peace, and strength. I drive past that empty lot, take a deep breath, and keep going. I don't look back anymore. I'm alive. I'm whole. And for the first time in my life, I am free.